we had to kind of end the other webisode because of time restraints, and I apologize for that because I wanted to get more into the drawers. Before we go to some other ways of making dovetails, I want to get this drawer fitted in here. So that's what we're going to do right now. Then we'll go to doing some hand-cut dovetails and using some alternative methods that you might like. With the drawer glued up and everything square, tape removed, our corners pretty clean, now we have to deal with getting the dovetails down smooth. Now, there's a lot of ways of doing it. A lot of guys prefer to use a hand plane, and that works really well. But you have to be sure you got a good sharp plane. Now let me explain something to you. This is end grain. If you elect just to sand it, end grain sands much harder than a flat grain. Which means if you're not very careful, you're going to cut flat grain around here and you're still going to have a wavy or lumpy area where you've got your pins coming through. Like I said, a hand plane does a real nice job. Now you notice I've got it set pretty low and I'm just cleaning it up. But I want to go over here to the router table, because if you've got a lot of drawers and you don't have a decent hand plane, it's just an alternative. So we're going to move the camera and take a look at the router table, and I'm going to show you another little way of doing it. All right, just for a mock-up to show you, and again as an alternative, and I want to re-emphasize, if you sand those, and that's the way most guys do it, most folks do it, start with a coarse paper, something like an 80. And the reason for that is the 80 is going to cut that end grain. It's going to shear it quicker and faster. Now you could also take a sharp chisel or whatever. But here's a neat little alternative. Now we're going to do this on the router table just because it's set up. But here's what we do. We could do it with a hand hilt. Assuming this is a drawer, we just simply take a piece of 1/4 inch plywood or something and lay up here and clamp it flat. Then the router sits here, and what we're using is a spiral cut flush trim bit. It doesn't have to be spiral, but they do nice. But we have to have a top bearing. If it's in a router up here, the bearing is going to run along this surface and trim our dovetail. Let me show it to you. That's pretty fast and easy. Now we're going to get another camera position and we're going to go to the table saw and I'm going to show you a little something on it. Now one of the things I want my drawer to do is I want it to just run on the runners. I don't want, if I have this front coming all the way down, when you push that drawer in, this inner edge can try to catch on this lip right here. Same thing in the back. So let's assume you're using plywood and you've already got the plywood in the drawer. All we need to do is to simply take, and I've already done it here, is simply take the table saw and set your blade just the thickness of the wood and about a 1/16 of an inch narrower than your drawer, and simply make a pass with the drawer in this position. That does us a back cut right here. If you're doing a large drawer or doing this on a table saw intimidates you, or you don't feel like it's safe for you, an alternative is, and it's exactly what I did to show you, is simply cut you a thin strip, again about a 1/16, and just glue it on. But when you do your drawer, you're going to have to compensate for that in height. I hope you got that. We want it just running on the runners, like a sled. Okay, once we're done and we're cleaned up, and I got a little bit of sanding and cleaning up to do, then it's time to fit the drawer. That's what we're going to look at next. So let me finish cleaning this up and we'll be ready. All right, I've got my drawer just slid in the opening because at this moment, and this is one of the things with the way we do drawers, I want to check how straight and nice my front is. Now I'm going to tell you up front, I cheated a lot. I've got a big 8-inch helical head joiner. So I jointed the face of it. Works great. There's only one thing you got to be careful of. When you exit, because this is end grain, it can chip out on you right here in any direction, even your dovetails coming this way. So a simple little solution to that is if you use a joiner, is to take and bump. Let's assume this is setting on the joiner. We bump it this way so that the knives are cutting into it and get just past the dovetail, then turn it around and go the other direction. Now, if you're going to use a joiner, listen carefully. It's best to do it before you make the provisions for the runners, because that'll give you a flat surface here. See, this way, if I try to run a joiner this way, and this is against the fence, I've got an opening here that can kind of move on me a little bit. All right. When I put this in, it's setting nice and flat. But when I come up closed, what I'm seeing here, when I set this perfectly flat with the opening, is I've got an area here about, it's a little over 32nd, not quite, it's not a 1/16, so whatever that amounts to. It's twixt and tween them. So that tells me odds are either probably what has happened is that the drawer frame is not perfectly level, even though I did it with a square. Or my front, which is now the sides in here, the sides, when we dovetailed it, could have been just a little bit out of square. Not supposed to be, but could be. But here's the cool thing. Now I can turn it around. Now if you're doing one where you're doing a different wood, this is all poplar, then you don't have that luxury of turning it around. But in this case, since it's all the same, I can turn it around and see which one fits the best. Okay, I've got the exact same situation. So that tells me that this, whatever reason, it is probably the drawer frame is setting up just a little bit in the back, because it's taking this drawer and twisting it out a little. What's my solution? Very simple. Let's get a hand plane. Again, this is the part of doing the drawers the way we do them that I like, is that I have full freedom to do whatever I need to do in order to get my drawer box fitting perfectly. And in the event, let me get rid of some of these tools. In the event I would make a mistake, and just trash the whole drawer. It's just a total mess. Again, I haven't lost my premier front. So all I'm going to do here is just take a hand plane, and I'm just going to hand plane a little bit off the back. You know, I'll hit it a couple times, a little further, a little further, a little further. Then I'm going to do the same thing over here, check my fit. Now, there's another common thing that happens, and that is you set your drawer in the opening, and the drawer's going, it's rocking, corner to corner, meaning it's not setting flat. When you glue your drawer up, try to do it on something that is flat, like the doors, to make sure you're setting level. But let's assume for a moment it's not. Something got out of square, or again, that drawer frame in there is setting this way or that. Now, I told you that often all I do is screw the back in. Now, there's another example, and the reason I do that is if this back, we glued this one, but if this back were just screwed in, I could simply loosen the screws and lower that drawer frame a little. Or if I'm getting a rock in it, I could lower one side, raise the other side to get my drawer setting flat. It gives me the flexibility of doing that. It's the reason I like the drawer frames. But here's the thing, if your drawer is setting in here and it's rocking, what you want to do is whatever side, if this side is up, you want to hand plane some off of this corner. You're going to find you're going to need to do the same thing to the opposing corner and get it down flat. That's another reason when you're gluing up a drawer box to try to glue it, make the width of it strong, meaning leave yourself. When I glue them up, I just barely get the wood in there, because I can come back and hand plane or do the flip thing on the table saw and trim it down a little. I hope you understand that. Okay, and that's how you get it level. You know, if you wind up having to glue a little shim on the bottom or something because you have to hand plane a little much or something, it's not supposed to happen, but it does. But again, it's not affecting what will be our final drawer and the final appearance of the drawer. All right, let's see what we got here. Now, I don't have any guides in here, so I got to wiggle to get the back between the posts back there. We'll get some guides in a minute. All right. That is much improved, but I need a little bit. I'm better here than here, so that tells me I need to take a little bit off of this side. Now, yes, before you ask, we can also work the drawer front. So let me just sneak a little bit more off of this. Now you obviously, you want to sneak up on this. Take your time, get it fitted. All right. I'm still just a little bit here. But I'm still maintaining we're going to be cutting this out in a minute because we're going to open it up so we can put the bottom in it. All right, we're good, except right here in the middle. And I've got a little bit of area there. All right, what can I do here? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pencil and mark it. Now, I'm having to do this a little different because this is a flush mounted drawer. In a moment, once we get this drawer front glued on, we're going to be using a technique that if we were doing an overlay drawer like we saw on the Cherry Secretary, you know, where the front overlays, then we would be doing that at this point because we want to get this drawer front perfectly flat to this case. In the case of adding the applied front, which we're going to do right here, then I can't do that because the thickness of this front is going to cause the drawer to have to go in a little more. In the case of an overlay, that wouldn't be the case. This would need to be flush right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a hand plane and I'm going to hit this just a little bit and clean it up. I'm good on my corners. Now, could you take a belt sander to that? Yep. Just go easy. You know about them things. They call them project wreckers, and there's a good reason. Now, in this case, I'm using just a little block plane. If you have a longer plane, it would be better. And I do, but I realize most of you guys don't. And make sure you blend this down. You don't want to do just the edge, because then you're going to curve your drawer front. Pretty close. Whoops. I've also got this set a little hard. We're doing it. And it would be a lot easier if I was right in front of it the way I do it, where I can step through, meaning I want to be able to carry through. Pushing the plane. Okay, we're good enough. Especially on an applied front, I mean on a flush front. All right, now, while that's ready, I want to trim this back out. So let's get to the saw. Okay, I'm measuring from the top of the drawer, what's the top of the drawer, to the bottom, I'm at to the top of the groove right here. And in this case, it's 4 3/4. Again, making sure my blade, okay. I'm going to set my fence at 4 3/4. Now, yes, I'm going to lose my half pin. And if you want, you can dovetail it so that you have that half pin in the back. I've done a lot of drawers and I've never had an issue without the half pin in the back. All right, you now see what I have. I'll be able to slide my drawer right in, no problem. Now, what I want to do is something you're going to find a little unusual. I'm going to set this up, and I'm going to take a hand plane or a sander, either one. Got a little bit of tape in there. Yeah, I know I'm using a saw. I'm not hurting it. Now what I want to do is I want to plane a little taper. I want to taper this inner edge from this point back to this point. And you'll see why just in a moment. Doesn't have to be a lot. I could do that easier. It's called a rabbiting plane. It's just narrower. Again, all I want is just a little bit off this inner edge, right up to this corner. I don't want to take it out of the corner. Again, you'll see why in a minute. Let me do the other side, and then we'll look at it. All right, I'll get around to the front and we'll keep going. Now, one of the things I like to do, I like to take this before I do that, before I put it in, is I like to dull this. That just keeps it from being catchy. And also on the very ends, I just like to dip it off. Again, making a runner just like a sleigh. All right. Now, what I need to do is I need to get a guide in here. And this doesn't need to be anything fancy. But what I need to do is my gap that I've got in this, again, is about a 1/16 either side. I don't want to be quite that tight because we've got finish and other things to go. We don't want the drawer that tight. So when I measure, I'm measuring in about 15/16 here. So I'm going to trim my drawer guides, and these are just, you see the cutout in the end? This is just a scrap piece I had from another project. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it. I'm going to cut it right at 1 inch and see how the drawer works, runs. And what it does, as you can see, it fits in between the post, and it's going to give us something for the drawer, to guide the drawer, exactly what it implies. Then I'm just simply going to glue it in place once I have it right. Now, be very careful that you don't glue it to the inside panel, because remember on this one we did all the provision for that panel to expand and contract. If we glue it to that, we just undid all of that. So let me try. I'm going to cut these at 1 inch and we'll see what we got. All right, I'm 1/000th under 1 inch. Let me see how we do here. Oh yeah. And you notice see here, I got a little bit of side play. I want that. That keeps my drawer from getting tight. Now, I'm ready to glue the front. Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set this where my gaps are even. And I'm just simply going to cut me a little teeny shim that I can slide in here so they stay even when we set the front. In this case, about a 16th. All right, all I got, I'm just going to slide that in there, break it off. I just want a gap. All right, I'm still a little tight. Let me cut me another one. All right, had to cut another one. About a zillionth less than what the first one was. I just don't want the drawer to be able to move side to side when I put it in. Now, again, I'm going to say this. I realize that this is a little unorthodox way of building a drawer. And if you're capable of doing half-blind dovetails and all of that, go for it. This is just a way that we have found, and I'm going to emphasize that makes positive sure we have a good drawer without risking our dominant premier wood, because mistakes happen to the best of us. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I have my drawer front prepped. And what I'm going to do is we're going to apply glue and we're going to set this in place. Now, I need to trim it just a little bit. No, I don't. My little shim is pushing me back out a little bit. Be careful there. All right. Now, I've got this set to fit the opening perfectly. Because once this is applied, I can then come back and hand plane and true my edges a little bit and get my gaps and everything just perfect. And I'm just doing that to prevent, any movement. Now, what we're going to be using on this is a wooden knob. And it has a 3/8 tenon on it. These are bulk, and we'll tell you about those later. We purchased these from Horton Brasses. Anyway, this is the knob that we're going to be using. So what I did is I went in here and I laid out where my knob's going to go. Why now? Well, when we glue this on, as you well know, trying to glue a flat surface like this on here, it's going to try to move all around. That glue makes it slick and it wants to move. So what we're going to do is we're just going to come in here, because we've got a shoulder on this knob that will hide, it goes further around the hole. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that little 23 gauge pin nailer and we're going to sneak some pin nails in here so the front can't slide when we take it out and clamp it. If you don't have a 23 gauge pin nailer, that's fine. You can take a little finishing nail and do the same thing. You can actually take a finishing nail and drive a couple in here and leave the heads stick out, so once the glue's dry, you can just pull them out. It will all be hidden by the knob. And of course, in this case, since we're painting this, it really wouldn't matter. We could just fill it and go on. We're going to have some filling to do all over the place. Okay, let me get the glue ready, and we're going to glue this on. I don't want to lose my little shims. Got them. Okay. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take me a little masking tape and run around the perimeter of this. And be careful that you don't want your masking tape to get under your front. This will just help keep any excess glue off. All right. But now, you know, a little excess isn't going to hurt anything really here because we're going to be sanding and cleaning all this up. Now, this is just a wood glue. Let me get one got a little bit more flow to it. Now what I like to use, you know, you can buy the rubber rollers do great, but just kind of as a gauge, this is just one of those little really inexpensive paint rollers that you get at the hardware store. And you want a coat on here, again, about like a coat of latex paint. Now, when we're doing the overlays, what we will do is we make sure, and you want to do the same thing here, is make sure this outer perimeter is really well coated. Because we don't want glue all on the back lips and sides of the overlay. Again, in this case, we're going to be doing it. Okay, you can see how heavy I've got it. Again, just like a coat of latex paint. Now, one of the things that you're going to see is that we've talked about that end grain. That end grain is going to soak up a little bit more. So I always add just a little bit of extra to that end grain. Then, what I was going to tell you is when we're doing the overlays, we're very, very particular not to get right around the edge because when we do the actual piece of wood. But the truth of the matter is I've glued them on doing that wet of a coat and only putting the glue on one side, and I've never had an issue. But this will just make sure. Okay. Get it in the drawer or in the case. Get my little shim in, so don't go moving. I want to make sure he's pushed back there. Same thing here. All right. Let me get my pin nailer. Actually, I should already had all that ready. Set my front in position. Stick it. I'm going to stick it now. Now you notice the holes, the little 23 gauge chutes, they're so small that even if you can't hide them, the finish will almost fill them. All right, I want to make sure I'm good and tight and everything's good. Now I'm just going to ease it out real careful. I'm pinching a little bit because I don't have all the guides in. Okay, now I want to clamp it. You don't have to use a caul, but it helps to distribute the pressure evenly. And while we do this, I'm going to put a little wax paper just to be sure I don't glue them together. Now I'm going to say this one more time. I realize this is a whole lot more effort than most people go through to make a drawer. But it's the way we do it. Now, in the case of if we're doing a chest of drawers or something, we'll try to do 2 drawers that are close to the same. Put a sheet of wax paper down, turn one drawer up on top of the other, and clamp 2 at a time. The only thing I can tell you about this technique, again, it's a lot more work. I fully understand that. But I will say this, I've never ever had it fail me. I didn't say that I had never ever had to see some drawers remade, because that's happened. And one of the, like I said, the place this came from was being able to resaw and do all of those, you know, book match drawer fronts and all like that. The other thing that it became evident with was when we had employees and things like this, is that if somebody wasn't real proficient in doing a drawer, you wasn't taking a chance on messing up. Now I'm using these fancy clamps. If you just got, you know, little twist clamps, inexpensive ones, they do just fine. Matter of fact, I'm gonna have to get a few. I clamp them well, as you can see. On big drawers, I'll actually take a pipe clamp and come down on this top to make sure that this end grain is down good and tight. You want to make sure everything is nice and tight. All right, I need another one here. We're looking good. All right, I'm gonna get another little clamp and put here. Okay, time flies when you're having fun, huh? All right, I'm told that this makes for a webisode. So what we're going to do, we're going to let this dry. Next time, we'll trim it up, be done with the drawer. We're going to see why we did this little hand plane on the back, on the inside runners, and then we'll look at a couple alternative ways of doing dovetails. So, see you next time.